And I think I've been like feeling the worry. Like, so my sister and I are really close. I'm the oldest. She was right after me. And, we went through a lot of our struggling season of life together, 4 years older than her as well. And so she's in surgery this morning, started at 7:30 this morning. I don't know when they're out, but yeah, I found out yesterday. It was an emergency surgery. And I really have been like trying to just, yeah, I think I feel it right now again. I think I've been trying to just stay positive. Um like I think I've been trying to think the best. Um I've been trying to believe in a good solution at the end of this. Trying to be strong for her, for my nephews, for my brother-in-law. So I've been like just like it's almost like because I'm deeply connected to my sister, um I almost have to like go numb because if I talk about it from a heart place, like I feel it heavy. My name is Ashanti, and welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast, where men get real. Men of all ages and backgrounds come to this space to talk about these masks we wear. The mask is a representation of what we let the world see about us. The front of the mask are the things that we gladly let people see. We talk about all the time. We're excited to let people know about us. And the things on the back of the mask are things that we don't talk about as much. Today, sharing his mask is Blair Daly. Blair is the founder of the Washington Initiative for Boys and Men, and he's passionate about this topic of supporting the healthy ability for boys and men to live in a world where we can be fully present and be ourselves. One of the things in this conversation you're going to hear is when we talk about our own masks, and as Blair talks about his mask, there's a idea that he recognizes that when he is trying to talk about feelings, he's talking about his thoughts about things. And sometimes he says he feels judged when people are asking him to talk about how he feels because he's thinking about how he feels, and he feels in that way judged. And maybe you felt judged on either side of it, either when you talked about your feelings or that you didn't have a way of talking about your feelings, or that you said you weren't feeling anything when maybe on the outside someone sensed that there were some feelings that were going unsaid or unspoken. In our work, we talk about this quote that we say, the longest distance that most people travel is the 18 inches between the head and the heart. Now, when we were in this conversation, and that quote didn't come to mind, so I didn't share it. But when you think about the journey from the head to the heart, it goes from how am I thinking about this to how am I feeling about this? And I know that I've gotten really good at being a thinker about feelings in my life because that's what was trained to me. Don't show feelings, don't be emotional, better not cry. And so all these things that I was feeling mostly got put into my head because I had to always be regulating myself, self-regulating. Don't feel this, don't feel this, don't show this, don't let them see this, don't let them notice this. Like all these self-regulating of myself, self-guarding of my emotions till I got to a place where like I don't feel much at all. I'm really excited that you get to hear this conversation. In this conversation, we talk about Richard Reeves, and Richard Reeves is the president of the American Institute for Boys and Men. He's an author. He's the author of a book called it's called Of Boys and Men. And from the Ezra Klein show, there's a conversation where he says, this is some things that are talked about in the show. In 1972, when Congress passed Title IX to tackle gender equality in education, men were 13 percentage points more likely to hold bachelor's degrees than women. Today, women are 15 points more likely to do so than men. The median real hourly wage for working men is lower today than it was in the 1970s. And men account for almost 3 out of 4 deaths of despair from overdose or suicide. Now, these are some stirring statistics that you may hear. Maybe you read his article in the New York Times, or maybe you read one of his books. But if you haven't, there is some work that needs to be done in our communities to support the healthy growing of boys and men. And there's a lot of these initiatives that are out there, and they need men to be volunteers, to be thought partners, to be thinking about this, to take surveys, to really understand, what are you thinking about? What are you feeling? If you've listened to this episode and you have not yet made a mask, we invite you to go make a mask. Hopefully we will be a part of these conversations around what men and boys are saying, because we're asking them in these conversations, tell me about your mask. Tell me about what are the things you're letting people see and what are the things you're not letting people see. And if you've ever had anybody who had an explosion because of overload of feelings, you probably know that it wasn't because of all the things they showed. It was usually because so much of things that they didn't talk about, they didn't get addressed, or maybe they talked about it to the wrong people who couldn't hear them. And so today's on this conversation with Blair Daly, I hope you really just hear his journey of trying to figure out how to be a man who is passionate about these topics and still in the process of doing his own work, of being able to come to a place of naming how he feels, describing it, processing it. If you haven't yet made a mask, I invite you to go make a mask today at millionmask.org. This week is our 20th anniversary celebration week. So this Saturday, we have a 5K happening in Oakland at Oakland High School. You don't have to come here to participate, but you can. We're going to have some food, some games, some fun, some music. We look forward to you being there. But if you can't come, you can do your 5K anywhere in the world. There's a link to register. It'll be in the bio and the show notes. It's on our social media. We look forward to you being a part. If you don't want to walk or run, you can just, hey, you know what? I'm going to just support the organization. You can do that. And one of the ways you can support is just by sharing this episode with somebody. Subscribe, write us a comment. Let us know what you're enjoying, what things you have questions about, and let us know how we can continue to make conversations that matter to you. Thank you for being a part of Taking Off the Mask podcast. We look forward to seeing you soon. We look forward to you being a part of this journey with us. Take care, everybody. Bye now. Blair Daly, welcome to the Taking Off the Mask podcast. So glad to have you.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Well, Blair, as our guest, I would like you to share with folks what you want them to know about you before we jump into these conversations about masks. So please take some time and share, folks, what you think would be helpful to understand about you.
I'm from the Seattle area, and I've lived in Washington State most of my life. For my day job, I work on transportation projects and programs for a city government near Seattle. And then my passion and what I do a lot in my free time, it revolves around advocating for improving the well-being of Washington's boys, male youth, and men. And that is manifested in some advocacy journalism that I do, as well as some grassroots political organizing and advocacy. So I've just been involved in that for 4 years or so, but it's become a major life calling of mine now. And then in my free time, I still do other things like sports and music and other things we might talk about.
The initiative that you are creating, growing, building, is there an official name to it?
Yeah, it's called Washington Initiative for Boys and Men, and the website is wibm.us.
Well, that topic is near and dear to my heart and the reason this podcast started. So I'm excited to have you here, and I'm looking forward to learning more. I know there's some other initiatives that are happening, and I'm really excited to learn more about those initiatives as well, because I think there's some synergy that we can work together to really support not only the work that you all are doing up in Washington, but that people are doing globally and definitely here in different parts of the U.S. So thank you for being here today.
Yeah, it's a movement that we want to increase our credibility and kind of have more of a seat at the table and kind of overcome the judgment that boys and men really, their interests are adequately taken care of because men have always been in charge and we still have a male president. Most CEOs are male. So that necessarily means that males are doing fine and don't need advocacy. I think that's demonstrated to not be the case anymore. And I think we can move towards a more open view of things like gender equity, gender equality, and be interested in any kind of disparities and equities wherever they exist.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to talking about that because I know we, in Ever Forward, when we first started the Ever Forward Club, this is 2004. I had a lot of it was not the norm. It was not the norm for this work, and it was not the conversation that was broadly being had, at least in circles that I knew about. I think there was always the men's movement that were happening, men having these men's circles and organizations that were supporting men to do healing and health related work around our wellness. But I think as a broader conversation in 2004, when we first started, it wasn't happening as it is had today. So I'm really glad that more people are bringing the conversation to the forefront. And so, well, you and I get to start first with us, right? Because, to talk the philosophical initiative talk without getting to the heart of why it matters, I think it becomes devoid of human connection. So you and I get to start by talking about our masks. And so as the guest, you get to decide who goes first. So either you want to go first or you want me to go first. And whatever you choose is great.
I'm happy to start with
You want to go first? Okay, fantastic. So you want to do the front and then I'll do the front and then we'll go back and then back?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. All right.
So here's what I wrote. And my 3 things to highlight are athletic, drummer, and transportation professional. These are things that I like people to know about me. They give me some self-esteem and self-worth.
All right.
So athletic, I can share, as a boy, playing team sports was a big part of my life. Basketball and baseball were the big ones. And I certainly, my confidence and self-worth were to some degree tied to my athletic performance because that was an area where I could really excel. Today, I'm 6'4", so I'm a tall guy. I have a pretty athletic build. So distance running has been, a passion of mine as well. And took after my dad in the height department. His max height was 6'4", and so I reached that max height and overtook my older brother, which is kind of a big deal for me because he's 4 years older. And of course, growing up, he was smarter and bigger and more capable. And so, naturally, as the younger brother, I felt a bit inferior and lacking in confidence compared to him. So then as an adult to overtake him in height, it kind of feels like a little revenge that I got. We have a good relationship now, and I respect my older brother a lot. But I am pleased about that. So athleticism, not just playing sports, but also knowing about sports. I think that's an area where boys kind of compete and demonstrate, an element of traditionally what boys should be and tend to be interested in, which is sports. So I liked knowing baseball statistics. I liked when watching a baseball game that, I knew the terminology and could describe the strategy involved maybe better than some of my peers. In the basketball arena, I got to play on the select basketball team instead of the regular one. In baseball, I was on the all-star team. My dad coached us some. And even until this day, I love when there are opportunities that I get to put myself out there and show that I'm particularly athletic. So, for example, at my workplace, we have employee Olympics every summer. And this is, a diverse workplace with people from their 20s all the way through their 60s and 70s. And so in a workplace of 500 people with such diversity like that, I can usually emerge on top or near the top with different sports that we would play. And I'm not shy about doing that. My athletic ability is a God-given gift, and playing sports is so fun to me. So it's certainly a source of self-confidence and something that I like people to think of when they think of Blair.
Beautiful. Growing up, did you feel, with the undercover competition with your big brother, was sports the way that you were able to build a reputation like that? Was that like a part of your identity that growing up was also a part of was expected, or more just that you felt like I can do good at this, so I'm going to do more of this?
I like playing sports, and I saw that I had some talent for it. My dad also, like I said, coached baseball, and so cultivated talent in us. But both with sports and music, those are areas where I pretty much followed in my brother's footsteps. And so he was a good baseball player. I played baseball. He played basketball. I played basketball. He started playing jazz music. Then I got into jazz music.
Right on. Right on. Well, thank you for the front. Thank you for the front. Here is the mask that I've created today. Still working on this design, but this is the design, the M embedded. And the words I used today were passionate, dedicated, and caring. I usually just lead with hard work. Today, passionate came out. There's a lot going on. We have a lot of momentum moving in my work. And so, like, I think I am hardworking for the sake of this vision and this dream that I've been trying to create in the world. And I think that has been kind of at the forefront, like this morning, I remember I was just coming in and I was like feeling tired. One of the mornings, I'm like, oh, I got to get some coffee this morning. Like normally I think I drink it out of habit, but this morning I was like, oh, like, no, I need some pick me up this morning. I think my mind has been busy. So I think it's when my rest was not as solid. I never have a problem sleeping. Like when I lay down, when I finally let myself lay down, I'm out. Like I'm out in 10 minutes. So it don't maybe less than 10 seconds. It don't take time. As soon as I hit the bed, it's over. But that idea of like waking up, like, okay, I'm still feeling kind of tired. I'm feeling kind of not fully rested. Was happening today, but I'm driven, right? It's like for this dream and this passion, and dedicated and caring. The caring is one that I've been working on more, like expressing first in front of the passion. I think sometimes because I'm so busy, like the caring, it's there because I'm doing the work because I care about this work. But I think sometimes it may look different because it's like, we got to get all this stuff done. We go, hey, what's happening with this? What's happening with that? I'm asking a lot of questions. I'm leading a movement, right? So you're constantly having to check in with folks and sometimes slowing down enough to just, how you doing? How's it going? What's working? What's not working? And making time for those moments are less frequent and I'm trying to make them more frequent. I think I'm usually in kind of driven mode to get the things done that we have committed to doing for our community, for our funders, for our youth, all rooted in this caring behind the scenes. But it doesn't always look that way on the outside, maybe. So I'm working on making sure that it's more explicit, and even just naming it for my own self. Like, okay, this is the purpose of why this is so important right now. This is why I'm so passionate that these flyers or this thing doesn't go out looking any old way. Like we have to care about the presentation of the work in the world, right? And I'm clear that I don't need to be making no flyers. I've made enough bad flyers in my life to know that Ashanti shouldn't be making any flyers. But I can look at a flyer and be like, yeah, that was not going to work. Right? So it's that context of like, I can't do it, but I'm gonna look at it and be like, yeah, that's not representing us right now in the best way. So let's try another couple of drafts of that, So anyway, that's the front of the mask that's showing up today.
I'm curious, in your current lifestyle operations, do you have any strict barriers or boundaries that you've put up for yourself that help you control how much work you do versus other non-work related things?
There's not many non-work related things in my day to day. It all revolves around work. I'm working on that. Actually, I'm working. That's the truth, and it's also something that I'm working on, right? Because I think because I work so much, I think not too many boundaries. Not too many boundaries. I mean, it's kind of like as a mentor in this work. The young people in my work, they have my number if they need to call. Sometimes it's random in the afternoon. Sometimes it's 10 o'clock at night. Sometimes it's 3 a.m, right? So it kind of depends on what the needs are. And if I hear it and I can wake up, then I'll hear it. And sometimes I wake up in the morning, I got a call that came in at 3 a.m. from a youngster, and I'm like, oh man, I didn't hear that call. So I'll reach back out. But if I had heard the call, I would have answered. I never not answer calls for the work. I mean, when I'm at dinner or something, I'm gonna like make a good decision about whether that's the right time. But I'm driven for this mission, right? And then that's where it roots in, right? It roots in like what is needed right now for this work. I'm more of a practitioner than just a person kind of in an office, like delegating to a project, right? Like I'm mentor with number one, right? I mean, I'm not only the founder of the organization, but I'm like, this is the work I'm passionate about. I didn't start it with thinking, oh, I got this good idea. Let me try and create this thing. I was at a loss for how to be a good teacher with some amazing students, and I had to create something that was going to solve a need, and so, yeah. So I think that, yeah, great question. I'm working on the boundaries is critical to me right in this season around rest, around what my definition of rest is, around what I have in the past attributed rest to. And so now I'm redefining my relationship with rest, because I think rest is important. I think it's valuable. I think it's necessary. And I think in the past, my relationship with rest has been, don't be lazy, Ashanti. Don't be lazy. Get to work. You got more to do. The dream is so big, no matter, even when I work 24 hours a day, it's not going to finish. And I'm actually probably going to do less because I'm going to be so burnt out. So really trying to make a balance between the hard work, which is I'm committed to working hard. That is a value of mine, and working smart, and making sure that I am working in a way that the young people who I work with are not like, yeah, I'm never doing that. He works way too hard. Like that they could see that there's some benefit to it, right? Like if you have a big dream and it takes pretty much your whole life to achieve it, you could either feel really good every day in the journey, or it could be like you're always failing. And I don't want to operate from the place of never achieving. And so really making time for celebration. Hey, we got this grant. Let's celebrate. Sometimes I'm just like, we got the grant. Let's go. Let's get back to work. We got more work to do. And so it's like those moments are like, oh, wait a minute. You're not allowing yourself to even acknowledge sometimes the good news, because you've let the dream kind of like take over it clouds all the things. The dream. We got to get to the dream, Now, I guess we go to the back. Let's do the back. You ready? Ready for the back?
Sure.
Okay.
Back of my mask, I wrote depression, generous, and grieving. So depression, I first experienced when I was 17. And then after that, I had 2 more episodes in my early 20s. And I'm really grateful to say it's been over 10 years since I've had any episode of depression. So my mental health has been good for a long time. But that was a really scary experience, especially the first time when, I was very severely depressed and didn't know what in the world was going on, but knew that I was miserable and self-loathing all of the time. I was in high school, in a fairly competitive environment with the sports and the music and the academics ongoing. And fortunately, my mom was very helpful during that period. So my parents divorced when I was 14, and my dad hasn't been in my life a whole lot since then. Some of that's my own decision as far as boundaries that I've chosen to put up at times. Yeah. But when I was 14 is when my dad moved back to Kansas, where he's from. So I was an adolescent boy without a father figure, without a male role model in the household. And I wonder if perhaps that's one of the reasons that brought on the depression when I was 17. Maybe it was a lag of, finally coming to grips with what I was missing out on, or maybe just instinctually knowing like something's off if I don't have a dad around. Who knows? It's very complicated to pinpoint causes of depression and mental health issues. But through a mix of counseling, medication, and prayer, I was able to get out of that episode of depression after 2-3 months. And then, but like I said, it came back again in my 20s. And now it's something that I'm pretty comfortable talking about, even just participating in the taking off the mask kind of concept. It was tricky for me at first because since about age 17 or so, since I've been an adult, I've been more of the mindset that I have more to gain by being transparent with my struggles and being able to talk about them than I have to lose. And I'm sure, I'm egocentric and I care about my reputation, but also I don't to the extent that I'm comfortable letting people in on, even current struggles that I've had, or at least past struggles that I've had. So at first I was like, how do I be honest in saying, what are qualities that I don't usually let people see? Because to some extent, it's like I do let people see these things when it's appropriate. You don't just approach anyone off the street and start telling them about your problems. But talking about, depression and mental health struggle, I think is important. It also relates to my advocacy, because physical and mental health of our boys and men is one of the 5 focus areas that we propose for a state commission on boys and men in Washington, if we can get it. And then the other ones that I listed were generous and grieving, and I can talk about those if you'd like.
Thank you. Yeah, well, thank you for that's what a beautiful. You mentioned that toward the end something about like when we decide like who we let see these things, right? When is it the right time, the right space, the right people, the right audience? I think that's so critical to this work, right? We're trying to invite people in these conversations to not say like you shouldn't have a mask. It's saying, do you have a circle? Do you have people that you can talk about them with, or do you, or are they stuck behind this wall or this mask that has been so tightly attached that you sometimes even don't know what they are? I think a lot of times in workshops we have students who will write something on the front and then they will leave the back blank, right? And I always, offer total empathy around that. Like blank means something too. It means, I don't know what it means, but it means something too. I can't think of, right? Even when in the context of an anonymous, like you and I are doing this publicly, but when we do workshops around schools around the country, they're anonymous. So in the context of an anonymous, 3 words, people are stuck to figure out what they can write. And that says a lot. And it says a lot when you're asking someone to self-select what it is that they would be interested in writing, right? So when we go to workshops and let's say we have some people coming up to read words, if it's blank, sometimes the students will be like, this person left it blank. And I'm like, hey, slow down. That's nothing to be upset about. Like, why? Well, don't be upset. It's blank because it means something. Blank meaning, it was like one of the first times where I started seeing people be upset that people left it blank, because in their mind, like, I wrote 3 words. Why couldn't this person find 3 words? Because if you are comfortable thinking of 3 words is one thing. If you have never been asked what's going on behind what people see on the outside, if you've always been able to get away with the easy answers, like, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm cool, everything's great. When somebody actually really asks you to look a little deeper or just explore, it can be scary. It can be like, somebody's going to know it's me. But oftentimes when students hear words from their peers, they realize, oh, it's not just me. There's so much more going on than people would know, and that's what the mask has been about. So thank you for sharing that. And I appreciate you for expounding on that. Okay, here we go. This is the back. Here's mine. And grieving is one that I actually have on mine right now too. So if you look here, so worry, my sister, and grieving. And originally worry was connected to that. And I wrote my sister specifically because my sister went into surgery this morning. And I think I've been like feeling the worry. Like, so my sister and I are really close. I'm the oldest. She was right after me. And, we went through a lot of our struggling season of life together, I'm 4 years older than her as well. And so she's in surgery this morning, started at 7:30 this morning. I don't know when they're out, but yeah, I found out yesterday. It was an emergency surgery. And I really have been like trying to just, yeah, I think I feel it right now again. I think I've been trying to just stay positive. Like I think I've been trying to think the best. I've been trying to believe in a good solution at the end of this. Trying to be strong for her, for my nephews, for my brother-in-law. So I've been it's almost like because I'm deeply connected to my sister, I almost have to go numb, because if I talk about it from a heart place, I feel it heavy. So when my mom called me yesterday, tell me about it, I was in between meetings and I was like, okay, I was okay. And I know my mom was trying to tell me about the situation. I was like, okay, thanks. I got to get back to work. I was feeling myself trying to disconnect emotionally from the conversation, because I had to get back to work and I didn't have the time to deal with the feeling of it. I had to take in the data. Okay. Got it. And I felt like in that conversation with my mom, I was being cold, but it was a self-preservation cold. It wasn't a work is more important cold. It wasn't a work was more important value. It was, after I get off this call, I got another meeting and I can't go into this meeting all messed up because I got work to do, and knowing how deeply I love my sister. So that's less than 24 hours. I found out yesterday, probably around 12 noon. So I texted my sister yesterday. I didn't want to call her because I know that, there's a lot going on with her preparing for this morning so I just tried to give her space, but I sent her a text, and I'm kind of embarrassed now that I didn't call her to hear her voice. So yeah, that's what's really present behind the mask right now. I think.
Is your sister in the same city where you are?
No, she's in Los Angeles. I'm in Oakland, and she's in Los Angeles. So yeah. So that's been less than 24 hours of new news and trying to get stuff done. My calendar is full. All week has just been back to back. But I think behind the scenes, I'm just wishing her really that the doctors are just taking care of her really well, and that the recovery will be amazing. So that's what's happening behind the mask this morning. And so yeah, I thought about not writing it and being I don't have time to feel this right now. But ultimately, that's what this show is about: is realizing that it's easier in the present moment to just talk about something else. I could put 3 other words, keep focusing on other things, but I know that the real work that I need to be doing is being more honest and open and normalizing that humans feel. And to pretend like I don't puts me into a dangerous state, because it's going to come out somewhere. It's going to come out sideways. It's going to come out in my attitude. It's going to come out in a passive aggressive way. And I don't want to be that person anymore. So that's what I'm working on. So that's what's happening behind the mask with me today. Yeah.
I'm also separated by some distance between me and the person I'm grieving for. He's my closest father figure and mentor. He was a college professor of mine, and I learned last week that he's in hospice. He's about 80 years old and dying from cancer. And I don't know what the right things to do are. But I did finally realize at least one thing I can do is write a letter explaining, making sure that I can tell him how I feel about him. And so I managed to finish that letter last night. And then today I want to make sure it gets to him. I don't actually know even how well he's doing now, to what degree he's awake and conscious. And so I'm also struggling to know whether I should go visit. I haven't directly asked, but but I think an open invitation is always there. He's certainly a very dear loved one. And I've never been good at talking about my feelings in the sense of like being able to use words well to describe how I'm feeling. I think partly it's such I haven't thought there was all that much use in doing so. Like it doesn't seem that logical or practical to me. And I am pretty logical and practical, I suppose. Well, at the same time, like in counseling, I've had counseling over the years, and in counseling, I'm happy talking about like what's on my mind. But I guess I'm sometimes criticized where it's like, yes, you're telling me what you're thinking about, but I want to know how you're feeling. And I'll feel frustrated sometimes when I'm asked that because I don't have much to say. And I'll also think, yeah, but what's the point? You know, maybe it's actually a fairly reasonable response internally to not think too much about how I'm feeling and to struggle to articulate it because maybe it's not all that helpful. I don't know. I mean, I certainly recognize the value of talk therapy and talking about your feelings, but I'm just trying to kind of tell you where I'm coming from on that. And so I actually, even my girlfriend asked recently, like she was trying to get me to talk about how I'm feeling since I found out that Dr. Schatz is his name, father figure of mine, since I found out he is in hospice. And I didn't have much to say, and I felt a little bit judged. And I can really understand where she's coming from. And it's the same place that the counselors were coming from and asking me to say, not what I'm thinking about, but how I'm feeling. And she's probably better about that than I am. And so from her standpoint, it's like, you know, why can't you use some feeling words? She wasn't doing it in a harsh way, but in the same way that from counselors, I felt sort of judged about that. And, you know, I even felt judged when Angie was trying to, in a helpful way, get me to talk about how I'm feeling. And I didn't have much I knew how to say. So now I'm just trying to think from that practical standpoint, what steps should I take to be good to him, to honor him appropriately, while also thinking about all the other people that are important to him in his life that, that I want him to be able to dedicate attention to and talk with and call and meet in person and read their letters. And so I'm struggling a little bit about how to, what to do.
In the context of grieving, do you, when you describe like, I have not seen maybe the need to or the value of it, do you think that context is why it's hard to find the words, like that you don't see? I think I heard you say, I don't necessarily see, I don't see the point. I think that's what I heard you say. I don't see the point to like talk about the feeling. Do you think that is a part of why it makes it hard to find the words?
Maybe. I mean, two things are true at the same time here that seem paradoxical. And one is that I totally recognize that there is value. And at the same time, I don't know what that value is. And like, I guess I haven't internalized it that well. So, I mean, this is a long-standing thing. And I think this is a fairly stereotypical male thing. Some men are better than others. But I have been in one scenario before where I lost a loved one. And that was, so I've been married before. I was married in my late 20s and divorced when I was 30. And my mother-in-law at the time died from cancer. And so that was my first time being up close with someone who was dying, and then really feeling pretty inadequate, like what role should I play here and what value can I bring? Because I'm not the best at, comforting people, or I've certainly never thought of myself as such. So I learned the hard way to some extent by making some mistakes and being criticized for those mistakes. And some of that criticism I think was fair and others was less fair. But I did make some mistakes and I've learned. So I'm trying to implement what I learned back then now that this is really only the second person that I'm really close with who's dying. He's a 4-hour drive away, and there's absolutely no reason why I couldn't, my work is flexible and I could go visit him really anytime. I mean, he's very important to me, and there's not much on my calendar that competes in terms of the level of importance and like saying a proper goodbye. And so I'm just trying to figure out, when should I do that? Should I do that? Is the letter the right approach? Kind of need to find out logistically, can he handle a visitor right now? Is that even appropriate? So I need to ask his wife about that. And I'm sure there's so many other people that she's trying to accommodate while taking care of him. But at least I've completed that letter, and I hope to get that to him today. And like I said, I don't know to what extent he's even in a position to be able to read it, or maybe his wife can read it to her. But I don't know if I've already had my last conversation with him and it was months ago, or whether I'm going to even get to have another phone call with him or see him in person. That's all up in the air, and I guess depends on how much longer he lives and, what kind of strength and awareness he has right now as he's dying.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that reflection. I think it's a journey. I know that one of my mentors talks about, as I've been navigating the waters, is like, it comes in waves. Like when somebody asks you the question, it may not be the wave of the emotion is not there. You're like, I don't have any, I can't. And sometimes when it comes, it's like in the middle of something where you don't have the moment anyone to like never really talk about it with, like on a walk or a workout or something, you're doing something else. And you're like, whoa, that feeling is coming pretty strong right now, but I don't have time to deal with it right now. So, and then when the moment when maybe it gets brought up by somebody is like, oh yeah, I'm not, I don't have any words for it right now. I don't have nothing's rising to, and I think we can't predict it. We can't predict it. We can't schedule it. We can't, and it takes us, I've found for me, I'll say us, it takes me to recognize, oh, I know my default. My default is to avoid it at all costs. Avoid thinking about it. Let's try and stay positive. And I've learned that that's not a healthy default for me, but is what I'm more used to. So thanks for sharing that, and I hope in this season, as you make these decisions, that you will, follow your heart. You will make the decision that will have no regrets, so that as the next chapter happens in all of our lives, as they do, that you get to feel good about whatever decision you choose to make, So I think that's so beautiful. So thanks for sharing that. I know grief is such a personal thing, so thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the work that you're doing, and I think maybe we will bring this to, because in our own individual stories, as you and I talk about our masks, we're also working in a system trying to make room for a broader audience to be able to have these kind of conversations, right? Like I'm not here with any desire or any attempt to judge. I'm in a place of like just listening and understanding and hearing and holding space, right? And how do we, all the initiatives that you're working on right up there, they're in Washington, that are connected to the bigger global initiatives, like where do you see some of the important tools or resources we need to provide for boys, young men, and men? Where do you see that being asked for from men in your community? What are the, whether it's tools, resources, or circles? I don't know what it may be. But what are you hearing men ask for in your advocacy work?
I guess the way I'd answer that is I don't really claim to be that much of an expert on what resources, what things men are asking for. I'm like really narrowly focused on this vision of that the male population needs a lobbyist, basically, that we need a special interest group. We talk about special interests in politics, and often it's framed negatively. Yeah. It's just the reality that any certain cause or any population group that has a set of issues that impact them, in order to get those issues on the agenda of politicians, of lawmakers, you need someone pursuing relationships with those lawmakers and doing so in a sustained manner and maintaining a high level of credibility. So that's where I see myself slotting in. My academic credentials are a bachelor's in political science and a master's in public administration. and I do work for government as an employee of a city government. And those things have given me some insight into how government works. But you don't need to have any of those qualifications to just become an advocate and do the relationship building and the sustained work that it takes. So I'm trying to figure out how to create some advocacy capacity for issues that disproportionately impact males. And to some extent, I'm asked sometimes like, hey, this state commission on boys and men you're trying to get established, what would it do? And sometimes I'm reluctant to answer that question because I just want to start with, can we recognize that there is a need for advocacy for boys and men through that gender lens, like we offer to other populations? And then it'll be up to the people leading that commission to develop the solutions based on public engagement and studies that they're reviewing. I don't want to prescribe now, before the commission even exists, what kind of things it should be doing. But I understand why people are asking for examples of that, because they want to be able to think more tangibly in their mind. It's easier for them to conceive of why this is needed if they can think of examples of what it would do.
And so therefore the idea would be the advocacy group, the lobbyists, the commission would advocate. So I guess it's building it up to a certain type of structure so that then it can then begin to act on behalf of men, right? Men and boys. Yeah.
In this case, a state commission on boys and men would be a vehicle for taking seriously boys and men's issues through that gender lens, recognizing that there are some male issues that cut across race, cut across class and other characteristics, where we can see when it comes to education, fatherhood, physical and mental health, jobs, careers, and financial well-being, experiences of males in the court systems. There's some areas where I think it is appropriate to be able to make sure that, are we taking a male-friendly approach to solving these problems? You see, the state government works a lot on issues pertaining to housing and homelessness, drug overdose prevention, suicide prevention, and then education. That's like the number one responsibility in our Washington State Constitution for the state government to carry out. And these are all areas where can we really say that we're bringing in experts who know a lot about males and not from a judgmental standpoint, but from an empathetic standpoint, kind of a male positive viewpoint? And I think the answer would be no. And part of that is just because there has been no very successful movement focused on boys and men from like a political standpoint to bring into being this advocacy embedded in state government. So we have state commissions already focused on different population groups, and a lot of people recognize the value of that advocacy for that population group embedded in state government. So I'd like to see that for boys and men in Washington State, and I'd like to see it in many other states too, where these disparities are very obvious when you look at the data and statistics. But outside of government, I'd also like to see it too. I mean, what I do with Washington Initiative for Boys and Men is just a passion of mine. It's not paid work, and there's just not any robust advocacy ecosystem focused on boys and men. So if we could get more support, perhaps we could have, an actual something like how the National Organization for Women advocates for women, or, there's all kinds of environmental groups that advocate for environmental issues. There's civil rights and racial equity organizations that advocate for those causes. If we could achieve something like that focused on boys and men outside of government as well, I'm all for it. It is challenging to overcome some narratives about boys and men and about like what equality and equity should look like. And I understand why that's the case. So the responsibility that I'm taking on, and that so many people who collaborate with me on this work that I'm very grateful for as I build this advocacy network in Washington, it's a lot of awareness raising and calling people's attention to these issues through that male gender lens, and then saying, wouldn't it be great for it to be somebody's job to be focused on this day in and day out? And how much could that person support other ongoing work where there's lots of people working on these problems, but they're lacking that kind of expert on the male population? And perhaps that could really elevate the work that's already going on by having that additional help.
Yeah. I mean, thank you. Thank you for that. And thanks for the work you're doing there. I think there definitely needs. I mean, there's more conversation than there was 20 years ago when I started the Ever Forward Club. I'm glad that there's going to be even more moving into the future, and I think being in a space where we can talk about it in a healthy way, right, as opposed to getting into the alpha beta talk where it's like, oh, you're just, like all the narratives that get defined on the outside and that get perpetuated sometime by the edgier factions out there who are saying, yes, men deserve to have XYZ from a place of like power, control, dominance, as opposed to more heartfelt understanding that we're talking about some topics that may be hard to understand for somebody who doesn't live in this body, right? It may be hard for somebody to understand who has already made up in their mind a narrative, like you talked about earlier, that men have and political power and economic power and all these things. They have all these things, but we're ignoring so many of the other human aspects of thriving that are missing in many communities and many around the country. So thank you for the work you're doing, and keep us posted here how in our work that we can be in these conversations. I know that there's some things on the national level that are in the, maybe they've been in the works, but I know that they're in the works. So before we leave, is there anything that you want to say, or any way you want people to, if they want to learn more about the initiative that you're putting on, that you're creating, how people can find you, or anything else as we get ready to close up?
Yeah, I would invite people to join my email list, which you can do at wibm.us. That's the website where my advocacy journalism goes, and I produce about one article or video per week. And it's a way to just kind of see what topics I'm covering. Most of what I write about or make content about has a Washington State specific angle to it or connection, but also a lot of the issues connect with what's going on around the rest of the country and the world. And then the other website that we have that's specifically focused on the Commission on Boys and Men bill and the grassroots movement trying to get that bill passed is waboysandmen.org. That's WA boysandmen.org. And on that website, we have a one-pager that explains the bill and the case for a Commission on Boys and Men. And then we have other resources like a video and a collection of statistics that more robustly make the case for these issues being not unique to one particular population of boys and men, but really cross-cutting male issues. So yeah, waboysandmen.org and then wibm.us, both those websites.
Well, Blair, we're going to put those in the show notes so people can find them there. Thank you for being a part of the Taking Off the Mask podcast. Thanks for sharing your mask with us. And I'm wishing you all the best in this journey, and especially in the season that you mentioned around grieving. But thank you for being here today, and thanks for being a part of the journey with us. Thanks for supporting Boys and Men.
Thank you for the conversation, Ashanti.
Right on. Well, folks, Blair and I, we shared our masks here publicly. You don't have to share yours publicly. You can go to millionmask.org, make your mask anonymously. And hopefully after you do it anonymously, maybe you will find a friend or find somebody you care about and invite them to make a mask too. That's what we can do. And small steps to really help our community be more seen, heard, and understood. So thank you so much, folks. Take care, Blair. Thanks again for being here. We'll see you soon. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is produced by Ryan Louie and graphics by Kelly Wong. Guests are managed by Dan Paloma, and the podcast is edited by Samuel Matingo. We'd like to thank everyone who's been a part of the creation of this podcast, and for every guest that has been a part of the show, you are now a part of the Taking Off the Mask family. The Taking Off the Mask podcast is brought to you by the Ever Forward Club, and if you like what you've heard today, please subscribe, write a 5-star review, and share this with someone. We look forward to having more conversations that matter. And please remember, there's more to you than anybody can see by just looking at you.